Okay, so Yachimo, greetings. Yedase, I thank you once again. We thank you for joining in with us. We touched on this last night on the previous piece that we did, presentation we did last night, said that we would go into some more detail about it tonight. So for those who are unaware, I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Radnehmbata Akan, Odwirafo of Nkwamua and Marukati Fimudi Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakane, Afuraitkait people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. We've been doing a series associated with Susuw, which is the ancient term for meditation, and different things that have to do with that. We did a presentation on Merit Seket, the female divinity of meditation and silence. That's on the channel. Yesterday, we talked about Susuw, or meditation, in the context of male and female complementary balance. And we talked about the male divinity, Hapi, the spiritual force animating the Nile River, and Merit, the female divinity, spirit force animating the Nile River, but also animating the rivers of blood in our bodies, the arteries and veins and so forth, and how just like all of our cells are dependent on the arteries and veins, the energy center, the river of energy moving up and down the spine and so forth, our spirit body is governed by that as well. So Hapi and Merit are directly related to that, and therefore Susuw meditation is directly beneficial for recalibrating that energy. So we talked about a lot with regard to that. We want to get into some more detailed information. We did a 3-part series a number of years ago, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, on this subject when we were doing Blog Talk Radio. So we wanted to, which of course is all audio. We wanted to give in this presentation some insight so you can see some of the documents and some of the images regarding this subject. Very important. So we call it the god Hotep and the goddess Hotepet and the etymology of conscious. The image you see here on the upper right, that is the deity, the male divinity whose name is Hetep. In the Coptic dialect, that's spelled Hotep. People often hear the term Hotep, but Hetep or Hotep, dialectal variants of the same term and so forth. There is a male divinity or force in creation that animates a certain aspect of creation, also has a shrine within the bodies of Afuraka and Afuraitkait African Black people. His name is Hetep. There is a female divinity named Hetepet, also in the Coptic dialect, Hotepet and so forth. A feminine force in creation, has shrines on earth in creation as well as within the physical bodies of Afuraka and Afuraitkait people. So many individuals are unaware of that. They may know that the term Hetep or Hotep means peace, but of course, the whites and their offspring, as they continuously do, they seek to demonize and corrupt our culture, and then brainwashed ignorant individuals from within our community take that on. So they started using Hetep or Hotep as a derogatory term, where we get the idea that we should make an ancient sacred term of our ancestral language and ritual practice that is not only in ancient Khanitic and Nubia in Egypt, but wherever we look all over Afuraka, Afuraitkait, Africa, as well as those of us who were forced into the Western Hemisphere and carried our ancestral religious practices, like the Hoodoo tradition, which is Akan, or the Juju tradition, which is Yoruba, Voodoo tradition, which is Ewe, and so forth. We continue to carry these ritual practices, the veneration of these divine forces in creation, and we still invoke them on a regular basis. So where would we get the idea that we should take the sacred name of a divinity and turn it into a derogatory term? We get that from our enemies, the whites and their offspring, and brainwashed, ignorant individuals take that on and spread it through social media. So for the past 10 or 15 years, if you hear somebody saying Hotep niggas, dusty Hoteps, and that kind of stupidity, it comes originally from the whites and their offspring because they saw how many millions of our people started studying our ancestral language and culture of Kemet, started incorporating these things into our lives, started rejecting the fake religions and the fictional characters, including Jesus, Yeshua, Yahweh Shah, fictional cartoon character who never existed, Muhammad, is a fictional cartoon character who never existed. Allah is a fictional character who never existed. Yahweh is a fictional character who never existed. Buddha, Brahman, and so forth. So all of the false, fake religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hebrewism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and so forth. And there's pseudo-esoteric and exoteric expressions. None of them are valid. We show in our book, Kuku Tumtum, The Ancestral Jurisdiction, how these characters were manufactured off of corrupted fragments from our ancestral culture of ancient Khanid and Kemet. So there were no ancient Hebrews, black or white. There was no Jesus or Yeshua, black or white. There was no Muhammad, black or white. There was no Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Moses, Aaron, David, and so forth. Sheba, black or white. So we go into detail and prove that conclusively. When we look at our own culture, we can dispel those foolish myths. And then we can get back to our own culture. It's no different than if you look back 100 years ago when our people were growing our own food and establishing our own independent black towns all across the South and parts of the West and so forth, after the end of enslavement and prior to when we escaped from enslavement and established, independent towns, a black independent town movement and so forth. We were growing our own food. Of course, it's natural, it's organic and so forth. And we're living to be 90, 100, 105 years old and so forth. And then we take on the diet of our enemies, the whites and their offspring. And then we start developing all forms of disease, all kinds of diabetes and cancers and high blood pressure and heart disease and lung disease and all these various things. And then some of our people say after, decades of suffering with these preventable diseases, we say, we need to go back to what we were doing prior to taking on this corrupt diet. And some people go back to natural organic foods. Some people get into veganism, which is something that originated thousands of years ago. And there's proof of that in ancient Kemet as well. There's studies have been done on mummies that span thousands of years, showing that the people of ancient Kemet had primarily a vegetarian diet and so forth. That has been scientifically proven and so forth. But some of us go back to natural practices, dietary practices, and we transform our health. The ignorant amongst us who follow the whites and their offspring, who, they would teach our people, you need to start ridiculing people who are trying to be healthy. So they come up with terms like a health nut or you're into health. Imagine the foolish idea of somebody saying you're a nut or something wrong with you if you want to be healthy, as opposed to being unhealthy. That kind of stupidity comes from the whites and their offspring. Then we take that on and we try to sabotage what our people are doing to purify themselves. The same thing has happened with regard to ancestral religion. Our people are waking up, studying, reincorporating ancestral religion, rejecting the fake religions and so forth. And when they see millions of our people doing that and leaving Christianity and Islam and Judaism, Hebrewism, Hinduism, Vedanta, Buddhism, pseudo-esotericism, pseudo-metaphysics in waves, Moorishism and all that other nonsense, when they see our people leaving all of that in waves and getting back to our ancestral traditions, they start becoming fearful. So they put agents within our own community to attack what we're doing, to try to ridicule what we're doing, because they want us to be enslaved to worshiping white fake deities and white fake personages, fake prophets who never existed, foolish cosmology, and so forth. So this is how over the past 10 to 15 years, you saw the denigration of the term Hetep and anything associated with us trying to enhance ourselves, purify ourselves, develop ourselves, and so forth. But of course, we're wiping all of that away. So we want to get into some detailed information. There is a deity, a male divinity named Hetep, a female divinity named Hetepet. They are central to our spiritual development. That has always been the case. You cannot function in the world without Hetep and Hetepet. We want to get into all of it. So, all right. So first, when you look at the image that we put forward, I want to show, of and the relationship to consciousness as well. So even the term conscious, initially in the 90s, when people started saying I'm conscious, of course, that came from our community. When people started saying woke, that came from the Black community, and specifically those who started embracing ancestral religion, studying their ancient ancestral culture and practices, changing their names from slave names, naming ourselves after rapists and murderers and dissexual perverts and enslavers, and going back to our ancestral names that are configurations of sound vibrations that when we hear them, speak them, or contemplate them, those sound vibrations stimulate our spirits to realign with divine order. That is the formula for a properly given name and so forth. So we go back to our names, our dietary practices, our ancestral religious practices, and purification, engaging in, entrepreneurship and so forth. That's what woke meant. That's what being conscious meant. Once again, the white Snarl Springs saw how powerful that was. So they began to infiltrate our community with agents within the community. They start pushing foolishness like extraterrestrialism or smoking weed or doing drugs or being promiscuous and all kinds of idiocy, or, you're not getting involved in consciousness or spirituality meant you're free from all the rules, and other religions have rules and we want to get away from rules. So we're going to become conscious. They polluted and corrupted the meaning of conscious to the point that when people heard the word consciousness after a few years, it became a dirty word. People don't want to hear the word conscious. They don't want to identify with conscious. Now, white people have taken over the term woke in the popular media and so forth, and they associate it with white liberals and homosexuals and LGBT nonsense and all kinds of idiocy that had nothing to do with the original term. Just like they take the term voodoo and try to make it demonic, when voodoo actually means divinity. They take the term hoodoo and try to make it demonic. It really means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit in the Akan language. So we're taking our terms back. We're taking our consciousness back and recalibrating ourselves as we should, as we are obligated to do. So we want to talk about Hetep, Hetepet, their cosmology, and the etymology of the word conscious because it's directly related. Now, we're going to start off with proper definitions. Okay, so we're going to get into this proper definition, the etymology and cosmology of the term conscious. So first, if you're going to say what does it mean to be conscious, and what does the term Hetep mean, or Hotep, we're going to take it back to the roots. So first, conscious. What does that mean? You can look in this etym online. You can look at etymological dictionaries. You can look at the Proto-Indo-European lexicon on the University of Texas website. They have, some extensive information there. But any etymological dictionary will show this information. So first, conscious. What does it say? So what is conscious comprised of? Knowing, privy to, from Latin conscious, knowing, aware, from conscire or conscire, to be mutually aware, from assimilated form, com, with or thoroughly, and it says see, con, and then sire, to know, see science. And then, of course, hold on a second. So con, the word forming element meaning together or with. Sometimes merely intensive. It is the form of com used in Latin before consonants except BP, LM, or R. In native English, formations such as co-star, co, tends to be used where Latin would be con. So that's important because con, co, com is all the same root, but it means together or with. Now let's look at science. So it's the root of conscious is conscience and so forth, but sire was the root of that. What does that mean? Hold on a second. the state or act of knowing what is known and so forth. From science, intelligent, skill, present participle of sire, meaning to know. Now, here's the important part. The original notion in the Latin verb probably is to separate one thing from another, to distinguish, or else to incise. This is related to cinder or cindere, to cut, divide. From the Proto-Indo-European root sky or ske, to cut, split. Source also of Greek skitsin, to split, rend, or cleave, and so forth. Now, what they're saying is the term skyer, science comes from sire, which is pronounced skyer in Proto-Indo-European. It comes from sky or skei, to cut or to split. And their assumption is it has something to do with separating things to gain knowledge. If science or sire or sky means to know, that means to cut or split or dissect, like dissecting an animal in science and so forth in biology, dissecting things so you can study these different things and gain some understanding from it. So kan, with or together, kam also coming together, and then skyer or sky, to cut, to open something up, look at the distinguishing parts and so forth, and bring these things together so you can gain some meaning from it. But they say it comes from these Proto-Indo-European roots. In reality, whenever they say Proto-Indo-European, that only goes back a few thousand years, they stole these terms from our ancestral language. So they don't really know why the sound ska and I means to split. They don't know why ka and ka means with or together. They just know those sounds mean that. We have the same sounds in our ancient language, but we also have a cosmology that undergirds the terms, that shows why these specific terms have that cosmological meaning. They don't know why ka and ka, or kan, or ko means with or together. Why doesn't moon or munu mean with or together? Why does it have to be the ka sound and the sound, ka or kan? The Europeans can't tell you that because they stole the term from our languages. We can tell you because it's directly associated with the deities in our cosmology. So let's look at that. So we said ka and sky. So the term ka in the language of ancient Khanid and Kemet, Nubia and Egypt, they'll define it as image, genius, person, and so forth. That is the term for soul. The soul, the divine consciousness, the divinity dwelling in the head region. So that spiritual force in your head that always pulls you towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order and will disincline you from thoughts, intentions, and actions that are out of harmony with divine order. The divinity that governs your head, in the language of ancient Kemet, it is called the Ka. That is translated as soul in the English language, the divine consciousness. Ka for males, Kaet or Kat for females. The symbol for the Ka are the two arms and two hands like this. This is the Ka symbol. So very often, typically when you see it spelled, you just see the two arms and hands like this. That's the symbol Ka, meaning soul, divine consciousness, and so forth. Sometimes they will place the Ka symbol on the region of the body where the Ka actually dwells, in the head region. So just like you have a physical body, and inside your physical body, there's a smaller physical body, which is the brain, which has the blueprint for everything that should take place in the body. That's the control center of the physical body. That's the, processor for the entire body. Your spirit body is an entity there's a radiant force in the head region of the spirit body that regulates how you operate as a spiritual being, including when you transition and become the spirit of as an ancestor or ancestress. And if somebody saw you clairvoyantly and saw your spirit in the room and so forth, if they were clairvoyant, they can see your spirit, but there'll be a radiant force in the head region. That is the ka for males, the ka-et for females. That's the quote unquote spirit's brain. That's why sometimes they will show the ka on the head region just to let you know this is where the ka, or the soul, the divine consciousness, resides. The term for spirit in ancient Kemet is ba for males, ba'et for females. But that's the divine living energy that animates you. But your divine consciousness, your soul, is ka and ka'et. And the root ka is where the Europeans take ko, and kan is in conscious, calm and so forth. That comes from ka. But let's look at another definition to go a little bit further. Okay, hold on a second. So we're going to go to our book. So this is one of the books. I've published 31 books. You can download all 31 of my books for free from the page on our website, the Nhoma page, publications page. But this is one of the important books with regard to cosmology. Let me just scroll up right quick. So the name of the book is the Okra complex, the soul of Akan Fo. And what we're showing in this book is that the term Ka in ancient Kemet is the same term Kara, also written Okra in the Akan language. It means the soul, the divine consciousness. So we were showing that the Akan people, of course, we migrated from ancient Khanid and Kemet, Nubian Egypt over 2,000 years ago, reestablished ourselves in the ancient empire of Akara, which is ancient empire of Ghana, and a couple of thousand years ago in the western part of the continent of Afuraka, Afuraitkait, Africa. About 1,000 years later, because of Muslim invasions, the Almoravids and others and so forth, many of us migrated from that region further south towards the forest belt, where the regions of Ghana and Ivory Coast are today, and reestablished the Akara or Akana civilization in that region. Then hundreds of years after that, some of our people were taken from that region and forced into North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Susuw, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how Akan people ended up in the Western Hemisphere. But we continued our ancestral religious practices. So you have Obia in Jamaica, which is the Akan tradition. You have Komfa in Guyana, which is the Akan tradition. You have the tradition Winti in Suriname in South America, which is the Akan tradition. And you have Hoodoo in North America, which is the Akan ancestral religion in North America. And of course, a few months back in October, we dropped our second documentary film, Hoodoo, Akan ancestral religion in North America. You can watch that film for free on this YouTube channel. But in this book, we were proving that the Akan term for soul, Kra, is the same term, Ka, in ancient Kemet, and the entire cosmology of what the soul is. So let's look at this section real quick. So as you can see right here, the term in ancient Kemet is Ka, the little symbol of the arm and the hands and so forth. Canadian Kemet, which is Nubian Egypt, Ka, feminine Kat, or Kaet, Kat. And then in Akan is Kra, Kra, also written Kra. That is a prefix, so sometimes the prefix is added, but Kra, or just simply Kra, 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 is a contraction of Kara or Kara, Kara. The root is Ka. What does it mean? The soul of a man. It means the same thing in Akan as it means in ancient Kemet. It is the divinity in the head region in Akan culture. It's the divinity in the head region in ancient Canadian Kemet. It is the Ka or the Kra, the soul, the divine consciousness. Now, another further definition. And in the Medutu, Ka for males, Kaet for females. We were just showing the two different spellings. This is a hieroglyphic or Medutu representation of that. This is a statue of one of the Pera, so-called pharaohs and so forth. Here showing that the Ka, when you have a seated, shrouded figure, that's a representative of divinity or divine and so forth. But this is from the Akan dictionary, the tree dictionary. You just saw that Okara, Kara, the root is Ka with the stem Ara, which is Ka, Ara, or Kara, or Kra. But the root is Ka. So we look further in the Akan dictionary. And what do they say that word Ka means? It says to touch, to come, or be in or bring into contact with, to join. To touch, come in contact with, to handle, to feel. What are these two hands reaching up, grasping, pulling things in on top of the head, reaching up and pulling in the energy from the forces in nature, plant life, animal life, mineral life, the sun, moon, stars, atmosphere, oceans, rivers, and so forth, the spiritual forces that govern all creation. We have a force in the head region that's reaching up, bringing things into contact, pulling things in, pulling it into the head region and so forth, reaching up and grasping and so forth. The Akan term Ka, to touch, come, bring, be in or bring into contact with, is a direct definition of the Medut symbol, a hieroglyphic symbol of the Ka. The same word Ka in Akan, that Akan people speak every day in Ghana and Ivory Coast and so forth. They're saying the same thing about the nature of their soul, the Kra, the thing that brings you into contact with, pulls in that information, energy, so you can be conscious and aware. The same word Ka, with the same functional definition, is properly represented thousands of years ago as the two hands reaching up to pull things, to bring them into contact with, to be with. Now, if we go back and you see the term Kan, meaning with, together, or with. Now you know cosmologically why Ka and Ka, means together or with. If a European heard somebody from ancient Canadian Kemet said, what's the word for together or with? And we say Ka. And it's also the term for soul in our culture. They leave the soul part alone and just say Ka and together. Ka means together or with. Then they steal that term, make it part of their language, and they say Ka, like Ka, star, Ka occurring, like a co-occurring, illness and so forth. Co-worker, you're working with somebody, you're pulling that person with you together and so forth. They just know that the sounds Ka and Ka mean together or with. Can they tell you why ka means together with? Why doesn't si or Susuw mean together with? Or nadi mean together with? Why does it have to be ka? They can't tell you because they stole the term. We can tell you why ka means together with, because it's also the term for the two arms reaching up to pull things into your head region, the seat of the soul, the ka at the soul, the divine consciousness. So we have the term phonetically, but we also have the cosmology that undergirds the term. They don't have that because it's stolen. So that's ka. Now we have science, which is shus, conscious, and so forth. We talked about sire. And it says, related to sindere, to cut, divide, from the Proto-Indo-European root ske or sky, ske, to cut, to split, to divide, and so forth. So we already have ka. Where did they get sky, which became skyus, or sius, or conskyus, or consius, or conscience, or conscious, and so forth? Did they get that portion from us? We already know if they stole these different terms and claimed them as Proto-Indo-European instead of being honest and saying we stole this from ancient Afuraitkait people, you should already know that if we look in the ancient language, we're going to find ske or sky or some version of that in the hieroglyphic dictionary. Well, let's look and see. And of course, that's exactly what we have. Ska, and in the Coptic dialect, sky, that is to plow. Very important. And you see the individual here with this plow. It's tied to the, to the animals and so forth. And you see the blade right here. And he's making the plow. Plow is an English word. We use the term ska or sky. And what we're doing is skying something. We're going to go sky something. What does it mean to sky something? It means to split, to divide, to separate. When you plow the fields, when you open up an incision in the fields and so forth, then you can plant the seeds, you cover them over with dirt, and eventually, of course, you have crops that come forward. But we go and sky, split, divide, and so forth. So the term sky, meaning split or divide, became ske in Proto-Indo-European, meaning to split or divide, and ka, sky, ka, sai, kan, skyus, conscious, conscious, and so forth, or conscience as well, stolen directly from the exact same terms. Now, why do we have sky, meaning to sky something? In English, of course, it means to plow, but in our language, we say we're going to go out and, we don't say I'm going to go out and plow. We say we're going to go out and sky. We're going to go out and split the earth. So what does that have to do with consciousness? When you take a plow and you split the earth, you open it up, then you plant seeds, and then you cover it back over, and then they germinate and they root and go deep down into the blackness of the soil, grab the nutrients and so forth, and then something sprouts and develops. So when we go split something, open something up, open up an inquiry into something, go deep down into the root of something to know something, grab that knowledge from wisdom and experience and so forth, and then new ideas sprout from that. That comes from that initial plowing, that initial splitting, that initial skying. There's another aspect of that that's very important for ritual purposes. So planting seeds and seeing them germinate, going deep down into the soil. In order to get to the root of something, you have to open up the soil. You have to split the soil and go down to the roots. You can drop some seeds on some, on top of some soil. They may embed themselves within. Maybe they won't, and they'll just, nothing will happen. But when you open up the earth and go deep down to the root and hit the root of something to get to the root of a matter and so forth, you have to split something first. Then you can go deep inside, grab what you need, utilize it for your best benefit, and sprouting and flowering and harvesting comes later. So that's the cosmological foundation for that. There's another aspect of splitting that the whites in our spring don't know anything about. They know that sky means to split. They don't know why that has something to do with consciousness in the true sense. We have the cosmology that supports that. Give you another example real quick. And this is one of our other books as well. Our book called Kemet, Hina Ntoro, The Black Nation and Divinity. Hold on a second. Pull that back out. Okay, so this is one of the other books on our website. I published this book to show that the term Kemet, as well as the term Ntoro, which is misnomer netter, both of those terms exist in the language of the Akan people with the same cosmological connotations and foundations in the language today that they had in ancient Khanid and Kemet. So we were just proving that in that particular book. But one thing that we touched on that's important for this cosmological study we're talking about the term Ntoro. And there's one piece that we just want to address right quick. The symbol for divinity in ancient Kemet is this axe. And they never understood why we have an axe to represent deity, a male divinity or female divinity. That's the term Ntoro for males, Ntorot for females, netter, netert, and so forth. But in Akan, it's Ntoro. So we still use that term every single day. In Vodun, they say Torowo. In Akan, we say Ntoro. So it's not netter, it's Ntoro. It's not netert, it's Ntorot, and so forth. But the symbol is that of an axe. So they never understood why we used an axe to represent the term for deity. In the language of ancient Kemet, the general term for axe is aku, to work in wood, to be a carpenter and so forth, but that's the term for axe. Aku, a carpenter's adze, an axe, a battle axe, and so forth. In Akan, akuma, a hatchet or an axe. Ku, in Akan, to draw, pull off, to cut close to the root and so forth. So we're showing aku means to cut. And then this is the Akan language dictionary, the tree dictionary on the right. Of course, the Medut Ntoro, the hieroglyphic dictionary on the left. Aku means to cut in ancient Kemet. Ku means to cut in Akan. Aku means an axe in ancient Kemet. Aku ma, but the root is aku. Akuma is an axe in Akan. So why is the divinity represented by an axe? Here's the key portion. The word for prayer in Akan is mpai. The root is pai, invocation, prayer, supplication. What is the root of the term pai? To strike, to smite, to split, rive, cleave, or break. So the term for prayer in Akan is mpai. If you say I'm going to make prayer, you say ba mpai. I'm going to make ba mpai prayer. The plural for mpai is apai, prayers. So why is the word for prayer the same word for pi, which means to split or to cleave? Because if you have an axe and then you go and pi, split or cleave, and split a tree in half and so forth, that's a splitting. We consider the sound vibrations that are released through ritual prayer. If we say nana nyame mechere wonsu, name ma wonsu, or nana nyame wa mechere wonsu, name ima wonsu, the sound vibrations are a pi, a split. We make an incision into the spirit realm, and then we enter through that gateway, that split that we just opened up, to into the spirit realm, so we can communicate with the Nananoman Samanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and the Abosom, the forces in nature, or the Egungun and the Orisha, the Kuvita and the Vodou, the Akutu, the spirit, or the ancestral spirits who are spiritually cultivated, and the Ntoro, Ntorotu, and so forth. So the act of prayer is a pi, a split, a rende. That's the cosmological foundation for going into the spirit realm, creating an incision, making a doorway, cutting and opening, and going in. So we show that in Akan, pi, to split, is also the word for prayer, a ritual splitting, pi. Of course, we also relate it to ancient Kanit and Kemet, pe, to rend, pet, to cut through, to split, to divide. So the term pe in ancient Kemet is retained in the Akan languages pi, to split, to rend, to cleave. And it's not just, regular splitting with an axe and so forth, but in a ritual context, making an incision into the spirit realm to go in so you can communicate. But splitting, once again, cosmologically, when we talk about our culture cosmologically, let's get back to our document. That's where this notion of plowing or splitting has to do with a ritual context. So the plow, when he's skying, he's about to sky or split the earth. Yes, on a mundane level, to plant the seeds so you can have crops later. You can split the spirit or the mind of the individual to plant seeds or dig deep to the roots to get the gems out of wisdom so you can utilize that to better your situation and enhance your life and so forth, or overcome temporary perceived obstacles. But in a ritual context, we engage in the ritual process, ritual prayer, ritual invocation, ritual dance, ritual chant, ritual prayer, ritual movement, and so forth, to create an incision in the spirit realm and then enter through that gateway so we can communicate with the ancestresses and ancestors and the goddesses and gods, the Nananom Nsamanfo and the Abosom. That's what the sky splitting means when it has to do with consciousness. Ka, the soul, the divine consciousness, sky, to open up, split, go into the spirit realm and grab that wisdom from our ancestresses and ancestors. The whites in our spring do not know why sky, meaning to split, has something to do with ancestral religion and deities and ancestral spirits and consciousness and the divinity that governs the head. They don't know anything about that. They just know that sa, ska, and I together, ska, I, means to split or separate or divide, and has something to do with knowledge, because they stole the term without the cosmological context. Now let's go further to deal with the relationship between the deity, the god, the deity, the Ntoro, Hetep, and the nature of consciousness. What is his role in creation? And then we'll talk about the goddess Hetepet and her role in creation. And they're directly related to consciousness. So when you hear Hotep and conscious, the conscious community, and Hotep, actually, the deity Hetep is directly related to the Ka, the soul, the divine consciousness, and you can't separate the two. So, and also the sky. We use this image here for the, flyer for the show. This divinity right here is who we want to look at right now. When you look at the term Hetep, to rest, to be happy, to be content, to be glad, to do good to someone, to repose, to be at rest or to go to rest, to set of the sun, to rely upon, to be at peace with. In the Coptic dialect is Hotep, plural Hetepu, offerings, gifts, alms, oblations, endowments, offerings prescribed by law or custom. Hetepu, peace, joy, content, satisfaction, also soft or gentle winds and so forth. Hetepu, plural, the U is plural. He who sits at home in peace. Hetepet, peaceful, gracious. So we're talking about, we know this notion of Hetep having something to do with peace. It also means divine offerings and so forth. Let's show a relationship between that and the Akan language, and then we're going to show why there's a region of the ancestral realm called the Sekhet Hetep, the divine field of peace and offerings. And this is where the cosmology really opens up. But first, let's pull this up. All right. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm going to pull up a page from one of the pages on our website. Okay. Okay, so what you see here, this is the symbol for Hetep, Nh-Kemet. Hetep, Nh-Kemet, becomes Chede in Akan, or Achede. Chede in Akan is Hetep, Nh-Kemet. Chedepa is the full term. Chedepa, Chetepa comes from Chetep, and so forth. So in Akan, Chede, which is Hetep, means gift or offering or donation as well, just like we showed that Hetep, one of the definitions is gift or offering. And you see that this is a little loaf of bread on an offering table. So when you put the loaf of bread on the table, then you have the little loaf, the conical loaf of bread, which was common in ancient Kemet, that structure, that form, conical loaf, and then you have the table. It is also representative of when the sun was set in the western mountain range. You have these mountains, and then the sun sets upon the mountains. It's akin to, an offering being placed on earth, like an offering being placed on a table. And once the sun was set in the western mountain range, then it would go into the quote unquote underworld, just like you take a loaf of bread or some food and so forth, place it on a plate. That's an offering given to the person, and then they take it and they consume it. The solar disk, the radiant force, is placed on earth, then it's quote unquote swallowed and goes into the underworld, and then it illuminates and gives life and vitality to those who are in the underworld, the spirits in the spirit realm and so forth. So, but what does Achede mean in Akan and in the culture and so forth? both of them mean gift or offerings. And we say, in the language of Kemet, the term Hetep refers to peace, harmony, yet it is also used as a term for ritual offerings. In Afuraitkait African culture, it is customary to give ritual offerings to the Nananom Nsamanfo, which is Akan for honorable ancestresses and ancestors, and to the Abosom, the Akan term for deities, goddesses, and gods, the divine spirit forces in nature. It must be understood that ritual actions in Afuraitkait African culture are never merely symbolic, but are always functional. There is a measurable transfer of energy and unearthing of consciousness affected through a feedback system by the ritual giving of offerings. This transfer is akin to the transfer of energy affected through the consumption of food. The chemical response of your organs and organ systems as the nutrients of the food are digested and disseminated are measurable. The chemical response to a holistic diet is a healing and empowering response that is not merely symbolic but functional. In essence, the act of ritual offering is designed to provoke the necessary units of energy and frames of reference, which is conscious awareness necessary to align or realign the spirit of the Afuraitkait individual with his or her Ka'et, soul or divine consciousness. When such alignment is affected, obstacles to proper functioning can be removed in a holistic fashion, and so forth. So, what's being said is when we give a ritual offering, and we put that offering out on a shrine to a divinity, force of nature, engage in ritual invocation, the energy emanating from that specific offering provokes the energy of that spirit, and then they respond by dispensing their energy to us. It's no different than even on a mundane level. If you have some rock incense and it's just sitting on a shelf, like some frankincense or myrrh, it's just sitting there. I mean, you may smell it a little bit, but it's sitting there. When you put fire to it, then it releases and activates, and the entire room fills up with smoke. And if somebody walks in and they breathe that in, it affects their body and so forth. So you activated something within the resin. Something was released, people breathed it in, and it affected their physical body in a specific way. If you provoke the energy of an ancestral spirit or divinity with a ritual offering that's charged up through ritual, you place it on the shrine and invoke the spirit, and the energy emanating from that ritual offering provokes their spirit, or quote unquote pushes their spirit, and then there's a response by them dispensing some energy to you, or some guidance or wisdom. There's a measurable response or effect. That's a feedback system. We're giving or provoking some energy and getting a response. No different than a child provoking the mother through crying. Once those sound vibrations hit the ear of the mother, and then she responds by dispensing milk through breastfeeding to the child and so forth. There was a provocation, a ritual invocation, a prayer. The sound vibrations hit the mother. She responded by dispensing what the child was asking for. The prayers are answered. We do the same thing through the ritual giving of offerings and so forth. So that's what Cheteh or Hetep is, ritual offering. Now let's get into one of the texts of ancient Kemet to see what we're going for. So this is what we wanted to get to. Plate 34, for example, in the papyrus of Ani, the Runu Pert Emeru's so-called Book of the Dead, in that particular vignette, in plate 34, when they're talking about this particular chapter is about the coming into the Sekhet Hetep, the divine field of peace and offerings and so forth, you will see this image. This is the deity Hetep. That's him standing there. There's a flower in front of him and so forth. It has to do with what now they will separate as aromatherapy. But we've always had that in ancient Khanate Kemet. This is the male deity Hetep, operant within the spirit realm. Now, if you've never seen an image of him, or you've heard people say Hetep or Hotep in the Coptic dialect, and they start utilizing his name in a derogatory fashion, you're going to see why that's idiotic. But that is the god Hetep if you've never seen him before. Now, let's look at a specific text from ancient Kemet that deals with that. And we had to, lay that foundation before we got into the text. But here's the text. This is the Runu Pertinent Heteru, so-called Book of Coming Forth by Day, misnomer Book of the Dead, and so forth. On plate 34, you'll find this particular chapter 110, chapter 110, and you'll find the same text in the various papyri across the, thousands of years and so forth. Very important part of the text that's read in a ritual fashion and so forth. It's a ritual invocation. And let's look at that. So it says, hold on, I just want to make sure you all can see that. All right. It says the beginning of the chapters of the Sekhet Hetepu. So they have the translation, they have the Medutu there, the transliteration in the language of Kemet, and then the translation in English. And of course, we have a two-part course. Each part one is 6 weeks, part two is 6 weeks of how to read and write the Ntoro, the language of ancient Kemet. So you can, those courses are archived. We have 40 online courses. Those are 2 of them. You can access those courses at any time. So you can learn to read and write the language yourself. So the beginning of the chapters of the Sekhet Hetepu, the chapters of coming forth by day and of going in and coming out of the Ntoro, the underworld or the spirit realm, and arriving in the Sekhet Anru, which is a region of the field of offerings and so forth, the Sekhet Hetepu and so forth, the divine field of peace and offerings, of being in Hetep in peace, in the great town, the Nebet Nefu, the Lady of Winds. And you're going to find out, and you will see later, that the Lady of Winds is a title of the female deity Hetepet. And this is what he says. He says, let me have power there, or Sekim there, power there. Let me be an Akut, an illuminated one there, an honored ancestor or ancestress. When they say strong, they're talking about Akut, an illuminated one there, that I may Sekau, plow there. Let's move this over. So it said, let me sky there. As you just saw, it says sky, to plow there. Let me reap there. Let me eat there. Let me drink there, as they are done all upon earth. So, first of all, the Sekhet Hetep, the divine fields of peace, the sacred fields and so forth in the ancestral realm. In Akan, we say the Nsamain Po. What is the Nsamain Po? Nsamain is the ancestresses and ancestors, and the Epo is the grove, the sacred grove, the sacred region where the plant life is and so forth. When we transition, our spirit leaves the body is interred, then we're making our way to the ancestral community. We move through this sacred Nsamain Po, this ancestral grove. In Yoruba, they'll say the Igbodu is one of the terms, the sacred bush and so forth. In ancient Kanini Kemet, the Sekhet Hetepu, the divine field of peace and offerings and so forth. You move through this sacred region, you get purified. If you lived in harmony with divine order, you can go join the ancestresses and ancestors in that pristine community. If you lived out of harmony with order, you're not allowed to be in that community. It's no different than if on Earth, if you had a, as we always say, a family reunion, and you invited everybody over and so forth, and then the one individual who was known for stealing, robbing, breaking into people's houses and so forth, and terrorizing people tried to come to the door and get in, you're not allowed to dwell with the community. You're outcast from that. If you lived in harmony with divine order on Earth, then when you transition and you move through the ancestral grove and you're searched out spiritually to see if you live in harmony and you're a harmonious individual, then you're allowed to dwell and have your existence in the ancestral realm in the Sekhet Hetep and in the Sekhet Aru, the divine field of reeds and so forth within the Sekhet Hetep. You can dwell in your ancestral existence there. And in Akan culture, they talk about how the ancestral realm is akin to the dream state. So just like you can have dreams and, interact with individuals in a harmonious way, when we transition, it's very similar. And we may live in that space for the next 100, 150 years until it's time for us to reincarnate. And then we're drawn back into the womb of one of our descendants 100, 150 years later and born back into the physical world. But while we're in the ancestral realm, we're living amongst that community, that pristine community, if we lived in harmony with order. So we go into the Sekhet Hetep, and this is what the text is talking about. So let me sow there, let me reap there, let me plow there, sky there, let me reap there, let me eat there, let me drink there, let me live in harmony and abundance and so forth there, just like I did when I was on Earth. Then the text says Asar Ani, this is the person who transitioned. This is his papyrus that was in his tomb and so forth. He says, has carried away Heru Set to look upon the building in the Sekhet Hetepet, the field of Hetepet, distributing winds upon the divine spirit in his day within the divine egg. He has delivered the interior of the body of Heru. I have crowned him in the house of Shu, the house of his stars. I behold repose in his seasons. He has passed through the northern district of the cycle of the divinities. His elder ones, hold on, let's switch over. He brings to peace, or he makes to be at peace, the divine fighters who keep guard upon life. He has made what is excellent or fair, bringing an offering. It says pacifies, but he allows to be at peace. The divine fighters, talking about Heru and Set, who are battling, and he brings them to peace and so forth over what belongs to them. He has cut off the locks from their adversaries. He has made an end of the disasters from their children. He has removed the injury of their spirits. May I gain power over it. May I know it. I have sailed in its waters that I may come forth to its towns. Really, her towns. I have power over my mouth, being provided with quote unquote enchantments or ritual invocations. Not let have power those individuals over me, the shining ones or illuminated ones, not let have power them over me. Talking about what he's talking about is, since I lived in harmony with divine order, I can bring to peace those who are in conflict. I overcame these disasters. I assisted in making sure that there was peace and balance and equilibration. So please do not let the illuminated ancestresses and ancestors have power over me, meaning I didn't live out of harmony with divine order, so please do not allow me to be punished. I'm showing and I'm proving that I lived in harmony while I was on Earth, so please allow me to live in this pristine community. Those who didn't live in harmony while on Earth, if they tried to enter into this community, the illuminated ones, the Akutu, the illuminated ancestral spirits, would overpower them and force them out. So he's saying, please do not let them have power over me, because I actually lived in harmony with divine order, so I like to live in harmony in this community. That's what he's saying. May I be equipped therein, your fields, and it says Hetep, and you see the seated figure here. The seated shrouded figure means this is referencing a deity, and the deity is Hetep. What thou wishest, mayest thou do. In other words, your wish is my command, and so forth. But talking about going into the field of Hetep and so forth, he liked to plow in the field of Hetep. Now, let me give one more. It cuts off, this text cuts off here, but in the Theban recension of the Pert Imheru, that text goes on a little bit further. We want to show that further expression of the text. And then we want to show what that cosmology is referencing. So this is a translation of the portion that was cut off, but in the Theban recension, it does exist. So what do they say? That text that was cut off right there, he continues in different renditions of the same, text. It says, "O Hotep, or Hetep, the deity Hetep, I acquire this field of yours which you love, the Lady of Air." The Lady of Air is actually Nebet Nefu, which is a title of the female divinity Hetepet. I eat and carouse in it. I drink and I sky in it or plow in it. I reap in it. I copulate in it. I make love in it. Meaning we, just like we connect with our significant other on earth, we can connect with our significant other in the spirit realm as well. I do not perish in it, for my ritual invocations, they say magic, but ritual invocations is powerful in it. I would not be agitated or aroused in it. My happy heart is not apprehensive in it, for I know the wooden post of the deity Hetep, which is called Bekutet. It was made firm on the blood of Shu, and it was lashed with the bowstring of the years on that day when the years were divided. My mouth is hidden and my mouth is silent. I say something mysterious. I bring eternity to an end, and I take possession of everlasting. Just another short portion of that text. This is Hetep, the god Hetep, the Ntoro Hetep, who walks throughout his field of his, this field of his. He partakes of a meal in the birthplace of the divinity. If he rests in Kenet, he will do everything in it as it is done in the island of fire. There is no shouting in it. There is nothing evil in it. I live in Hotep. My bag and my bowl are on me, which I have filled from baskets, being one whom the spirits of the Lord of plenty guide. I depart and ascend to him who brings it, and I have power through him. He accepts on my behalf, for I am equipped and content. This great ritual invocation, misnomered magic of mine, is powerful in this body of mine, in these seats of mine. I am one who recalls to himself that of which I have been forgetful. I plow, meaning sky, and I reap. And I am content in the city of the God. I know the names of the districts, towns, and waterways which are in the field of offerings, and those who are in them. I am strong in them, and I am a spirit in them. I eat in them, and I travel in them. I plow, meaning sky, and I reap in the field. I rise early in it and go to rest in it. I am a spirit in it, as is the spirit, the deity Hetep. Now, so what are we saying, and what is he saying in that capacity? When you transition, you go to the spirit realm, you're talking about plowing and reaping or skying. When you split the land and you bury the seeds, and eventually crops manifest. And if you do things properly, you have an abundance of crops that you can be fed from. When you make an incision or a split, when you transition in death and so forth, there's a ritual opening. You plow and so forth, you split something open, you open a gateway to the ancestral realm, you move through that gateway, you go through the test, the balancing of the heart and the feather and so forth of Ma'at. There's also a test with the male divinity, Ma'a, just like you have a test with the female divinity, Ma'at. When you pass those tests, then you're accepted amongst the community of the ancestresses and ancestors and so forth. And you can plow in the field and you can dig the depths of the field and so forth. And when we talk about Susuw or meditation, measuring the depth of something, calculating the depth of something and so forth, and you can gain that wisdom, you can gain that power and use it to illuminate yourself and empower yourself and rejuvenate yourself. On earth, while you're still living on earth, you go into the spirit realm by making a split. You sky, you use your consciousness, your ka, your soul, your divine consciousness to split or a sky, make an incision, a gateway to the spirit realm, and you go through that gateway through meditation, through Susuw, or through ritual song, or through ritual dance, or through ritual prayer, or through ritual chant, or various ritual movements and so forth. So if you see someone in the Hoodoo tradition or the Yoruba tradition engage in ritual dance and then they get possessed by a spirit, that was a gateway to the spirit realm. And through dance, they went into a trance, got possessed, opened that split, went through the split, ancestral spirit possessed or the divinity possessed. If someone is playing drums and people engage in ritual chant or ritual song, and the sound vibrations send people into a spiritual state, they go into trance, spirit possession happens, they open the gateway through ritual song. Some people engage in ritual prayer. Those sound vibrations with ritual prayer, specific words and so forth in the ancestral language, open that gateway. They move into the spirit realm, spirit possession happens, spirit communication happens. Some people through ritual movement, some people through stillness. We talk about Meri Segert, the female divinity of stillness and silence. You turn internal. Instead of projecting the energy outwardly, you force it inward and you crack open that split and you go into the spirit realm through Susuw or meditation. Spirit possession happens, spirit communication happens. Once you sky or a split or a sky, then your Ka, your consciousness, can go into the spirit realm, grab that ancestral wisdom, be informed by the Aboson, be informed by the Nsamafo, informed by the deities and ancestral spirits. When you come out of that ritual state, now you're filled up with that energy and consciousness so you can move forward and overcome obstacles. That is the purpose of skying or splitting in the ancestral realm, opening up, grabbing what you need, and empowering yourself. That's the cosmology. Even when you see if you look at it from a visual perspective, when the solar disk sets in the west, goes into the darkness of the underworld, and now you have the solar disk, and you see Ra as Afura moving through his solar boat in the 12 hours of the night. And in fact, let's pull that up real quick just so you can see a representation of that. Okay, so I'm going to show you one of our books, Afuraka, Afuraitkait, The Origin of the Term Africa. Okay, just so you can see a visual of what I was just speaking on. You see Ra in the form of a sacred falcon sitting in his boat, and the solar disk, which is the Aten, is in the boat. So he's sailing across the sky in the boat of the Aten. And Ra is the creator, Ra-et is the creatress, Ra is the creator, and so forth. And he's in the form of a falcon sailing across the sky. So the sun rises in the east, sails across the sky, and sets in the west. And then when he sets in the west, he's no longer in the form of a falcon, an aerial animal. He takes the form of a flat-horned ram. And then he is called Afuraka, Ra moving through the Afu of the flesh. And in the 12 hours of the night, the boat of the solar disk is in the underworld, moving from the west to the east in the underworld, bringing illumination, golden solar, fire and light to the denizens of the underworld and so forth, the spirits that are in the spirit realm in the darkness, to bring illumination to them and so forth. And then eventually comes back to the east and changes back into the falcon form and flies up in the sky. So if you think about solar energy going into the underworld and going into the darkness, and if you want to access the solar energy, the illumination, the golden energy, the power, and the illumination, you sky or you plow or you split the land, you open it up, you dig deep, and you go into the darkness to grab that solar energy, that solar fire, that illumination, and then you take part in that and you consume that and you become illuminated and empowered and so forth. So you use your ka, your consciousness, your soul, your divine consciousness to sky or plow in the fields of Hetep so that you can access the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'et to empower yourself and illuminate yourself. Scroll down a little bit further in part 4 of our text, just so you can see the imagery. And we show that the term Afuraka and Afuraitkait comes from an ancient language. That's the origin of the term Africa. And of course, this image, this is Ra'et, the creatress. She's the creatress of the universe. And then Ra, of course, is the creator. So there's always a balance of male and female, Ra and Ra'et. So when you're skying, using your ka, your soul, divine consciousness to sky, ka, sky, ka, skyus, or kan, skyus, or conscious, and so forth. But your soul, your divine consciousness, the divinity in your head, directing you to sky or make a split in the spirit realm so you can grasp information that's deeply rooted and grounded, so you can germinate and sprout and root and fully flower and so forth, and harvest can come. This is what's taking place cosmologically. This is what's taking place spiritually. Every time you engage in ritual, Susuw, meditation, ritual song, ritual dance, ritual chant, ritual, prayer and so forth, you are engaged in the sky process, the ka sky process. Soul splitting in the field of Hetep so you can grasp those divine offerings and so forth. Now, the final piece that we want to touch on is on the feminine side. That's Hetep. Hetepet is the female divinity, also Hotepet and so forth. Hetepet, Hetepet, Hotepet. You see it's a goddess of offerings and a friend of the dead, the deceased. You see in the pyramid text of Pepi, utterance 646, you'll see her name spelled this way. In the pyramid text of Pepi, utterance 715, you'll see her name spelled this way, and you'll see the determinative of a seated female divinity. In the pyramid text of Mer in Ra, you'll see her name Hetepet spelled that way. Then there's another reference, her name spelled here. In the book of the opening of the mouth, you have a similar ritual invocation to a number of different female divinities, including Hetepet. And we just highlighted the Medut that spelled her name right here. This is the relevant text, the translation. Purified are you, O you male divinities, male deities, and censed, meaning incensed, are you, O you female divinities, goddesses, Ntoro, and you have obtained your fluid of life through Ur-Hekat, which is a female divinity, through Sekhet, which is actually Sekhmet, another female divinity, through Sekhet. They mentioned the name twice, through Sekhet, through Neseret or Neserit, through Neserit. They mentioned her name twice, another female divinity, through Hetepet, through Hetepet or Hetepet. And then it says, there is an offering to you, O all you male divinities, all you female divinities, and his hands are full of your love. There is an offering, and there's a happy face to King Men Ma'at Ra, the giver of life, who is happy on this day. So it's a purificatory ritual, the opening of the mouth, but they reference the female divinity Hetepet in that particular text. And in the first text, when we talked about, and let's just go back to that one right quick. In that particular invocation, when it says the beginning of the chapters of the Sekhet Hetepu, and the chapters are coming forth by day and going in and coming out from the underworld and of arriving in Sekhet Aru, being in peace in the great town, Nebet Nefu, the Lady of Winds. That Lady of Winds that they're talking about, that is a title of Hetepet in that particular text. And throughout the text, you'll see, when they're talking about the Lady of Winds and so forth, the Lady of Air, the great female divinity, the great goddess and so forth, they're talking about her in that particular context. So, as we can see here, there's a direct relationship between the soul, the divine consciousness, the Ka or the Kayet. We use our divine consciousness, our Ka or Kayet, to plow into the fields of Hetep. When we go into the spirit realm, whether after transition, but even we go into those same ancestral fields or lands when we go into ritual. If spirit possession happens, or you're pouring libation and want to communicate with your ancestresses and ancestors, or the Abosom and so forth, you are going into the field of Hetep. You're going to that sacred field so you can plow and reap there, so you can sky there, you can split there, split open, gain that wisdom, gain that illumination, gain that empowerment, and then utilize that to enhance your life on a moment-by-moment basis. You're using your Ka, your soul, your divine consciousness, to sky, open, split the fields of Hetep and Hetepet. And because they hold the, just like the black soil will hold that fire energy deep within our system, our melanin, the Ka, the Kayat, the soul, the divine consciousness, that aspect of our melanin that holds that fire energy within us, and you can release that through ritual invocation and so forth. That is a portion, the water system within our bodies that permeates our bodies and so forth, that is akin to the ancestral realm. And part of that within the black substance, the melanin that's in all of our organs and systems and nervous system and everything else, that is a part of the Hetep region in our body and Hetepet region. And that solar fire is contained within that blackness. And we release that. We can go in and access that, life force, energy, power, and so forth. Just like martial artists on a mundane level can use the chi energy of fire, power, and so forth to break through cinder blocks and everything else. When we engage in ritual meditation, Susuw, or other ritual invocations and so forth, we can engage in different forms of, ritual invocation where we can expand our power, so to speak, and accomplish certain tasks. So, but that black substance contains that fire power. When you split it, you can release that power. When you go in through meditation, you can release the power. When you go in through ritual dance, you can release the power. Going through ritual chant, you can release the power. But that black substance is holding the fire, solar, golden energy of Ra and Ra'et. The skying releases it. The splitting, the ritual releases it. So Ka, sky, the soul, divine consciousness, Ka, sky, splitting in the field of Hetep, releases the energy of Ra and Ra'et. So again, once the sun sets in the west, and it's moving through the underworld. That solar, fire, golden energy is moving through the blackness. Just like when you take in a deep breath and you pull in air, but you also pull in solar, fire, energy, and it gets inside your system and fires you up and so forth. And through meditation, ritual invocation, you can release that power or expand it within your being. That's what you're doing. The ritual is the sky with your consciousness to release the power. So yes, that's the information that we wanted to share with you all tonight. We had done a 3-part series back a number of years ago on Blog Talk Radio where we went into information in some detail, but of course that was audio, so you couldn't see, the documents and so forth. We wanted to bring that back out. Any questions in the chat room for any of the information that we went through? You can post those questions in the chat room now. There's a question: what do you think of this idea of being spread that women are naturally promiscuous and lustful, and it's normal for them to sleep with multiple men and all that? People are always putting out foolish information based on their own, sexual deviance, and then they try to pretend like it's some kind of sacred, mysterious, principle, which is not. So whatever, deficits they have spiritually, it's just amplified when they try to put forward these silly little theories. But when people look, you never accept anything people have to say. Anything they say, just ask them to prove that. If they can't prove it, where did they get that from? They're just making things up. They're just trying to justify their own, perversity. In the Yoruba tradition, it's said that not every Ori is equal. Some people's destiny is different. They also say one chooses their Ori in life events, that Obatala governs all Ori. When they're talking about, sometimes they use those terms, loosely, and when they're translating things from Yoruba into English, they kind of loosely translate things. What they're talking about is, everybody has a different function. Some people, just like your organs have different functions, different forms, each one of us is Afuraitkait people. We have a different function to execute in creation. So in that context, everyone's akra is different. Now, when they start talking about destiny, they're trying to translate things. Some people, because certain things they've done, you'll see them run into different obstacles because they have put themselves in a position where certain things are happening. That's not part of their Ori per se. It's things that they've done that was in contravention to what their Ori was directing them to do, and they created some disorder for themselves. And sometimes they'll even come into the world and they're still carrying certain things that they need to overcome. But their Ori isn't the negative thing. The Ori is a divinity. It's never in disorder. But sometimes when they translate things, even in the Akan tradition, a Ghanaian may translate something and say someone has a bad head or a bad okra. It's not the okra is bad. The okra is a divinity. If someone went against what their okra was directing them to do, just on a basic level, if your kra, soul, divine consciousness, is pulling you in your head region to consume certain foods and stay away from other things, and then you consume these things because people told you to do so, and you get sick and you're throwing up and everything else, you went against what your kra was doing and you created negative consequences for yourself. Your kra is leading you to engage with certain individuals and do certain things and certain activities. You go against that. You create disorder in your life. You transition. You're still spiritually, discordant as an ancestral spirit, and you come back into the world. You still haven't overcome that. You're still discordant spiritually. So you're moving through life and you're still discordant. You need to do some spiritual work to realign yourself with your okra. It wasn't that you were born with a bad okra or Ori and somebody else is born with a good one. You're born with a quote unquote bad destiny and someone is born with a good one. It was based on things that you have done that you can bring over. It's like someone can be ill and they can leave their house and go somewhere else and carry that virus with them. You can transition, and if you were not developing yourself in the ancestral realm, by the time you return, you don't just come back with a clean slate and everything is is brand new, you're the same individual. You returned. If you were an honored ancestor or honored ancestress, you're going to return as an honored ancestor or honored ancestress, and people will notice that this child seems like a wise old soul, so to speak. But if you were somebody who was self-destructive and you transitioned that way, and you didn't do anything to, enhance yourself while you were in the ancestral realm, then you come back and you're still discordant. And you're born and you're still trying to make things happen. You still have an opportunity, but same thing. So, and it's the same thing when they talk about different life events, and some people choose this or choose that. They're skipping over a lot of steps when they make certain statements. Sometimes they know the steps they're skipping and they just assume people already know that. Then sometimes they're just misinforming people because they've been misinformed as well. But those different things that are happening are also based on things that you've done in the past, either earlier in your life now or previous existence. And then that sets things in motion, later. It's not predestination. Like there's not just, oh, this is going to happen and that's it. You're doing certain things and you set certain things in motion. And if you don't change lanes, this is what's going to happen. Just like we always use the example, in Samanfo, ancestral spirits have the vantage point of like somebody standing on top of a building and they can see one car speeding towards an intersection that's 4 or 5 blocks away, and they can see another car speeding towards the same intersection that's 4 or 5 blocks away in a different direction. Those two drivers don't know what's about to happen, but the Nsamanfo can see that if they keep going, they're going to crash. If they don't change lanes, they can see what's unfolding right now. They can see what's unfolding in our lives based on the lane that we are in, and they can give us some guidance where you may want to change lanes because if you don't, you're going to run into this. You're already on that track. They can see what's unfolding. That's because we set certain things in motion based on our behaviors, our interactions in this lifetime and sometimes in previous lifetimes that have carried over into what's happening now. So, but that's why it's important to engage in ritual practice so we can get a keen understanding of this, as opposed to, people will say things or publish things or they'll just say anything. And we're trying to wonder if this is accurate. When you go in and, the best, institution for learning ancestral religion is your Nsama Nkombre, your ancestral tribe. Learning directly from your people what the interactions and, inner workings of the ancestral realm are, as well as the Abosom, the forces in nature, how they operate and relate to one another and so forth. And then they'll put you in position to come in contact with individuals and, situations to see how these things unfold, just as they showed you spiritually. But we need to gain a keen understanding, we need to engage the ritual process ourselves. One thing with regard to these, chants and so forth, the text that we just used, the texts of ancient Kemet are not just something to read, they're ritual chants in and of themselves. And then we also have, let me just post this real quick. And we'll put this in the chat room link. Okay, so placing, there's a term, the simple or a sample, apai, that's on our website, which is a sample prayer, ritual invocation, and so forth in the language of Kemet. In fact, so that link is in the chat room, but this is the document itself. And it's just a basic prayer in the language of Kemet that you can, and of course, it's for as with everything we do, is for Afuraka, Afuraitkait, African people, Black people only, of course. But this is the document itself, a sample vocalization of Apai prayer from Kemet using the Akan, Akan vocalization. Sometimes they don't use all vowels in the language of Kemet, but that's because they knew the pronunciations of these things anyway. So, but this is a sample piece, and then you'll see the link to the audio for that. But the key thing is, beyond simple chants, the first foundational piece is Susuw, which is meditation, and learning from your people, and they will direct you as to what culture you are from to confirm that, and what language you should be studying and so forth. So that's the number one piece. Okay, so, and with regard to that, we also, of course, we mentioned in the beginning of this particular session tonight, so we have our class, our course, our Susuw meditation instructor certification course is beginning Tuesday. So if you'd like to take that course, of course, it's open to our people only, Afuraka, Afuraitkait, African Black people only, of course, to become certified as a meditation instructor. You can utilize that certification, that credential, to conduct sessions in, cultural organizations, events, schools, places of employment, human services agencies, different places where people, and you can also, set aside time where you rent out a space for an hour and have people come. You can conduct meditation sessions there as well. But this is a way to utilize that certification to empower our community, but also generate income for yourself. So our certification course begins Tuesday. We have some spots still available. So look at the Susuw Meditation Instructor Certification information on our YouTube channel. We have a couple of, we have the flyer. We did an overview of that course last week. That's up on the channel now, talking about, the course and what it's about. But it begins Tuesday, so register now to reserve your spot. Okay. Question about, some people on the platform said that women were here before men. That's just more misinformation. People just making up things. You have, all of that comes from Europeans. You have white males saying that, men were here first, and you have white females trying to say women were here first, and then some of our people latch on to this misinformation and we repeat it and try to blacken the information up. Never been accurate. From the beginning, if you look in our cultural cosmology, before Europeans existed, and in the text of ancient Kemet, for example, when Ra is talking about the creation of the universe, and him as well as Ra'et, which in that particular text, the Book of the Cow of Heaven, she's called Arit Ra, or the creatrix of Ra and so forth, or the Eye of Ra and so forth, talking about men and women came forth from his Arit or Eye, which is really talking about Ra'et's womb and so forth. That's always been the case. So when we talk about what do our people have to say about that, as opposed to brainwashed Black people repeating the misinformation of European pseudo-metaphysicists or pseudo-spiritualists and so forth, you can always ask them, where did they get that information from? And then make them prove where they got the information from. You can look at the Book of the Cow of Heaven that predates Europeans. The Book of the Cow of Heaven, or the Book of the Heavenly Cow, famous text from ancient Kemet. You can see talking about the, Ra creating, men and women. Now, once you see that, now see where they got this foolish information about women were here first or men were here first. And you have Black people, some Black quote unquote scholars, so-called elders, as well as other people repeating that foolishness, pretending like it came from our culture. But when you ask them, if they say, well, this is from our ancient culture and they knew that the women came first, okay, where did you get that from? Because in reality, they got that from Europeans. and they simply blackened it up and tried to make it part of our culture because they thought it was deep or some revolutionary information that nobody had. But in reality, they got it from Europeans, and it goes back to 19th century theosophists and foolishness like that. And it's based on dissexuality, homosexuality, trying to make, on that side, the female superior and the male inferior. And then on the flip side, the white dissexual male tries to make the male superior and the female inferior. And then we foolishly embrace that, thinking it's something deep or revolutionary. And then we repeat that foolishness. And we're just perpetuating misinformation from Europeans in blackface. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and end it here. I didn't want to go too long. But yes, if you have any questions, you can send us an email. But we do have a few spaces once again. So check out the Susuw, the Meditation Instructor Certification. That begins on Tuesday, this Tuesday coming up, 8 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to be 4 weeks every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Okay, so once again, Yerase, we thank everybody for joining in with us. And Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. That's it.